Good evening, Wild Weather here for liveweatherblogs.com. It's coming up in the evening right now. I always like to do a blog before the OZ model runs come out and kind of take a look at what's going on right now, because you start to get some clues as to what may be coming later in the week by looking at what's going on now. And this is what we're seeing right now. The cold air is coming up and is coming into the United States, coming in this way, if you would, and that's driving behind this clipper here. There's a clipper right here moving in, and it's swooping down this way, and it'll be swooping out as quickly as it comes in. But with it is a fresh batch of cold air, and behind that is yet another system back here with more cold air lying and waiting. And this impulse here is the one that may be coming for later in the week. And right now it's up here kind of moving slowly but gathering itself, if you would. This is a northern stream energy, and down here, that right there is the southern stream energy. And I mean, if you just follow, you can watch, I'll show you in the water vapor map. This is the southern stream energy, and it streams all the way like this, and you can see where it wants to go. I mean, here's your railroad tracks basically for the storm pattern this week. But look at this thing down here, is just waiting for northern branch energy to come down and grab it and bring it up. That's impressive. That's very impressive, and this is what I was talking about coming into January, February, and early March is, you're going to have this kind of energy sitting down here. You're going to plunge below zero air toward the Gulf of Mexico. I've been calling for this for weeks and looking at the possibilities since, geez, it was right before Thanksgiving. And I said, the cold air that's building up there, I can just see it crashing down here into the Gulf of Mexico. Been very, very warm over Florida, 80s consistently, 70s and dew points in the upper 60s and 70s consistently for weeks now. I've been watching that, and this cold air that's building up here, crashing to the Gulf of Mexico, and then bingo, things start evolving, you get the overrunning, and then you get a coastal development of some sort, whether it's down here or here, kind of a moot point, but a big storm may actually be brewing and coming for Thursday and Friday. So this is just one little piece. You look at the current radar, but that right there is grabbing my eye down here in Brownsville, Texas. That is quite an area of precipitation along basically the end of a front. It's almost like in tropical season. I know you don't like talking about this right now. Almost like in tropical season, where you look toward the tail ends of the front for storm development. It's really no different here, folks. You got storm development, and it's going to be on this tail end of this front. Whether the northern branch and these two can come together here will determine how much snow we get in the Philadelphia area, points north and west. Now, another thing that's going to be complicating things is that the polar vortex coming down. How is that going to be setting up? Because quite frankly, the polar vortex in all of this is going to be the key to what goes on. Let's get away from the radar and go to the water vapor map. Why don't we? And here it is here. Love the water vapor map. All of these maps, by the way, right here. This one being brought to you by handweather.com. And clearly you can see, here it is here, the subtropical jet going from south central Mexico all the way up into the North Atlantic. That's your subtropical jet. And every once in a while you look and you can see along the subtropical jet, you see these little kinks. And there's one right there at the very end of that. Let's stop it there. Right there. Right here. You see that little bulge there. That little bulge means that the warm air is trying to come back up into the chilly, colder air. I'm going to call it colder air because up here it's just downright Arctic. But that's your first sign that these two pieces of energy here, here's our polar vortex rotating around here. I'm going to put this into motion again. If these two want to come together, if the two in fact do come together, you have subtropical jet energy here, polar vortex here, northern branch energy here. You get what they call a phase, and if that does indeed happen, I don't see any reason why Philadelphia doesn't pick up a foot of snow and maybe more. Now, where this storm tracks is now going to start to become the biggest question, and it all revolves around where does the polar vortex set up. Does the polar vortex dig more south and then make it come up the coast, or is it more of a piece where the polar vortex comes down like this, and then the storm gets so far north before it starts moving out to sea? If you remember back down in December of 2009, the storms would develop down here. They would come up, and they would seemingly get to a point here and then just start drifting off to the east. That may be the case again here in 2014 coming up. That's to be seen, but we'll wait and see. May not be a fact where the storm goes all the way up the coast and buries all of New England. So it's going to be one of those things we're going to have to check back a few times between now and say Wednesday to figure out exactly where does the storm develop, how far north does it get, does it try to sneak out to sea. I don't think the sneak out to sea is going to happen, only because of the state of the NEO going from neutral to positive. I've been saying it for days now. When you get to NEO to go negative or neutral, be around neutral and start rising toward positive, chances are there's some kind of a East Coast storm coming in. If it's in the wintertime, it's usually a snowstorm. AO is going to be going negative, and even the AO is going to rise to positive sharply, which would indicate maybe after the snowstorm and wicked cold, it actually gets warm and we get a big rainstorm. That kind of actually did happen in 1996. And the way this is set up here, I'm not saying a 1996 type of storm is coming, but it does kind of make me review that storm a little bit and say, hey, maybe there's a couple of storms here, because in 1996 you had one storm develop and then kind of move, and then another one developed in the Gulf of Mexico and moved up and left its upper level support behind. Because something like that happened, and it's indeed impossible. It is not impossible. So, am I saying we're going to get a storm like 1996? I'm not ready to cross that bridge. Is there a significant snowstorm coming? I'm feeling more confident that that is the case. So let's put this into motion again. You can see the players on the field right now. Player number one, the subtropical jet, is primed and ready to go. It just crossed through our area this morning. This morning in my media here, there was still wetness around it. The skies cleared and we still had low-level moisture available. So the moisture is not far away. The cold air is crashing in right now, falling well below zero now up here in Minnesota, and I'll show you that in a moment. So here's our cold air slamming down. We're going to meet that relatively warmer, moist air. Northern jet energy coming up and over the top of the ridge out here. You can already see it. If the upper level energy dives into this location here, those people worried about an out to sea solution, forget it. This piece of energy dives down like this, there's not going to be any going out to sea. Just remember, there's a pretty strong southeast ridge down here, and as this gets down in here, it's only got really one way to go, and that's back up again. So I think the no storm thing is being taken off the table by me, and it was taken off the table this morning when I said the game's not over yet. And believe it or not, the game is still not over yet, but it's not over yet so we can fine-tune the details here coming up tonight into tomorrow especially. So let's take a look at some of the temperatures right now. There you go. Right now, 27 degrees below zero. Folks, that's not a wind chill. That is an actual temperature. Right? There's a lot more where that came from, because if you go north of the border in Canada, that is some incredibly cold air. 22, 29, 40 degrees below zero. I mean, it's not just in one little area. All of Canada is below zero, except for the southwest part, because of the ridge that's going on in the Gulf of Alaska, which are negative EPO. So, the cold air is there. And if you think that's not cold enough, alright, let's throw the winds in. Watch this. 60 degrees below zero. Over 50 degrees below zero, actually under 50 degrees below zero in many locations. This chunk of air it's headed south, folks, and there's nothing stopping it. And with a pattern like this, as I said yesterday, if you go to the other side of the pole in North Asia, relatively warm over there in North Asia. I've been watching this for a couple of years. Relatively warm over there in North Asia. And you go back to Canada. Folks, all the Arctic air is in the northern hemisphere here, and it's on our side of the pole. So chances are there'll be more snowstorms down the pike as we tap the polar vortex. And if you ever do get any blocking, that's when you're going to get a major, major storm along the East Coast. Not seeing the blocking quite yet, but remember, we don't need a very negative NEO to get a big snowstorm. As a matter of fact, in a situation like this, right here, where you have your sorry, this is loading up here. When you have your pattern like this, a negative NAO actually would cause maybe the storm to go out to sea. So in this case, is in one of the few cases where you really don't want the NAO to be negative 1.5 to 2 here. You really need it to be around that neutral, and then to rise rapidly to positive, because what you get, northern stream energy comes down like this, bumps against the southeast ridge, which has been here all the while. Southeast ridge, you live or die by it with a snowstorm in the east. Now, can the polar vortex do its work? This right here, up here, this spinning around up here, that's the key to where this storm will go. Deflect it east, or is this, to me, it looks more and more like it. You just look at it on the water vapor map. You can see the railroad tracks for the storm, folks. It's set. As Rob would say, ready, set, snow. This is Wild Weather for LiveWeatherBlogs.com. We'll do another update later on. Have a good night.